All right. And let me go ahead and share my screen so that you can see the presentation that I've put together. And let me know if you can't see this. Are you seeing the imposter syndrome? Yep. Okay, good. All right. So imposter syndrome is something that came up quite a long time ago for me, and I'm going to go into a little bit more about it. But my sense is how this creates chaos around our food in particular came up for me when I was listening to a talk on just the blankness or the blandness of imposter syndrome in general. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to define the imposter syndrome. Some people call it a phenomenon, and who gets imposter syndrome and what makes us vulnerable to imposter syndrome. How does imposter syndrome manifest in food addiction? The neurological shifts that we have in relation to this. Something you may not have heard about before, default mode network. It's an aspect of our brain. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So another aspect that I've learned has been incredibly helpful for me is the resonant warmth. Unconscious contracts, and then other remedies and tools to release the imposter syndrome. And I am going to, as I mentioned earlier, please feel free to interrupt me if you've got a question or if it's not making sense. And my hope is that that we'll have a couple of times at least for Q&A, and then maybe a little bit more sharing available too. All right, what is the imposter syndrome? Psychologists Pauline R. Clance and Suzanne A. Imes coined the term in 1978, describing it as internal experience of intellectual phoniness in people who believe that they are not intelligent, capable, or creative, despite evidence of high achievement. The first time I heard about this was in 1978. I was in my second year of college at the University of Michigan, and I felt like an extreme phony. I felt like I was wearing a mask. I felt like there was these voices that were talking, and they weren't me. You know, I'd come up with some witticism or some wise thing or answer a question, and I'd be like, where did that come from? Of course, this was way before parts work, but I really didn't believe that that was me, and I was certain I was going to get found out. I hope today that I'll be able to give you some insight into how I see this through the lens of food addiction and getting to the other side of food addiction and living vibrantly. So the 4 hallmarks of imposter syndrome: diligence and hard work, or the other side of the coin, procrastination and self-sabotage. That one is a big one for me. In research, women used hard work and diligence as a cover-up for their perceived inadequacy. Later research also showed that some people procrastinate and self-sabotage to avoid criticism or failure. So it is 2 sides of the same coin. Intellectual inauthenticity. Downplaying of knowledge and skills and abilities, or just saying, not revealing true opinions of a situation in order to protect someone else's feelings or to preserve the relationship. I'll go into that a little bit more later when I talk about unconscious contracts. Charm and perceptiveness. Often people with imposter syndrome also exhibit high emotional intelligence. This can include a keen understanding of what others need, which can support a sense of value and connection. So you are brilliant. You're also aware of all the ways you can screw up, or you did screw up. You see it clearly. Oh, I could have done this thing better, faster, smarter, quicker. Oh, I could have done that so much better. Oh my God, why did I use that word? The 4th is seeking mentorship for the purpose of external validation. In the research, Clance and Imes found that many people struggling with imposter syndrome sought out mentors who were well respected in a particular area of interest. They posited that this was in order to gain external validation. We needed that. So I want to do a little bit of a quiz, and this is you can do this rhetorically. You can write down yes or no's. It's just a yes or no. But there may be some fill in the blanks you might be interested in. And I'm curious about this one in particular. So I want to continue showing the slides, but if you want to pipe up and say, yeah, that's me, I'm really good with that. So we're going to start with number 1. Do you secretly worry that others will find out that you're not as bright and capable as they think you are? I think Nancy's trying to unmute herself. No? Okay. Do you sometimes shy away from challenges because of a nagging self-doubt?
Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you tend to chalk your accomplishments up to being a fluke, no big deal, or the fact that people just like you?
Yeah, that fits.
Do you hate making a mistake, being less than fully prepared, or not doing things perfectly?
Yeah.
Perfectionism bug.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Do you tend to feel crushed even by constructive criticism, seeing it as evidence of your ineptness?
100%.
Uh-huh. When you do succeed, do you think, phew, I fooled them this time, but I may not be so lucky next time?
Yeah.
Do you believe that other people, students, colleagues, competitors, are smarter and more capable than you?
Yes.
And this applies to dieting, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Everybody does it better than me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Look at them. Look at them. They do it so well. Look at them. They shine. They shine. They get a 1 on everything. And I can't figure this thing out. So do you, oops, sorry. Do you live in fear of being found out, discovered, or unmasked? This is a big one. This is a big one. This fear business really, really undermines our ability to show up. So let's assume that you got at least one of these right. And let's go deeper. These are the different types of imposter syndrome. We could probably go into some more, but these are the big ones. The superhero, overworking themselves to make up for how inadequate they feel. The natural genius, set exceedingly high goals. So feeling like if I have to reach the pinnacle, I have to get up to this place, and then crushed when you don't meet them. Expert, never satisfied with your level of understanding, always trying to learn more. Perfectionist, never completely happy with your work, fixated on flaws instead of strengths. And this is a big one for many in the food obsession community. Soloists, prefer to work alone. You won't ask for help for fear of appearing weak or incompetent. And I do want to say I will share the slides here because this one to me really spoke to me, this graphic. Really said to me, okay, these are all aspects of how I feel. Many intelligent, capable, and successful people believe that their success is due to luck and fear that they will someday be exposed as imposters. They treat evidence in ways that maintain their false beliefs and debilitating fears. They ignore and misattribute evidence of their own abilities. We discount it while readily accepting evidence in favor of their inadequacy. Anytime. I mean, how many times do I hear someone say, oh, I had a really bad week? Really? Yeah, I tasted the soup I was making for my husband, and I had some extra fruit outside of my plan. I forgot it at lunch, so I ate it 2 hours later. Okay, yeah, that's, and I'm not laughing at that. That's real, and that happens all the time, and we hear it in our heads. But let's look at the thing. Okay, there's 21 meals in a week if we're eating 3 meals a day. That's 21 meals. You got 2 things outside of what you consider perfect. Guess what that is percentage-wise? That's still an A. That's still an A, but we don't give ourselves an A. We fall into depression and sadness and grief and feel like we can't do this thing. We can't do it right. So why am I doing it at all? That's one of the biggest, is that spiraling, horribilizing that we do to ourselves. People often feel like a fraud, even when you're arguably made it. You got the job, you earned the recognition, you won the award, you lost the weight. You can't seem to shake the feeling that it's all smoke and mirrors, that you must have tricked everyone and that at any moment you'll be discovered. Guess what? At any moment, every one of us is panicking about whether or not we're going to gain all this weight back. You feel more prone to failure, may become less productive, and are characterized by insecurity and procrastination. You devalue your worth. And there is a terror of discovery, or a fear of discovery if you don't want to go to terror. You undermine your experience or expertise. I think it hits food obsessed people harder. And that's what was coming to me when I was listening to the seminar this week on it. It was from the perspective of being hard on ourselves and not being and not loving ourselves. And this kind of imposter syndrome aspect can come up for us, and we end up not feeling like we love ourselves. So think about how
That's her food bowl.
think about how we look at our food program. Prior to learning about the brain science of willpower, I believed I was weak. So I spent, well, I read the book. I was 58 years old. I spent 57 of those years, I'm sure, thinking I was weak because I couldn't control what I put in my mouth. Maybe 56 or 55. Okay, I'll give myself a break for a couple of years. Maybe I didn't recognize it until I was able to read. But we considered ourselves weak for so long. That is in our DNA. That is woven into our processes, into our insula. It is woven into the fabric of our brains. I wore my addiction on my sleeve. So I was constantly knowing that someone was ridiculing me. They were either looking at my card, or they were looking at my size, or they were noticing how hard it was for me to walk down the aisle in the airplane. Fat jokes are still okay now, even in this day and age of sensitivity and non-bullying. Fat jokes are still okay. And so we're constantly getting this kind of bombardment. Even if, God forbid, we only have 10 or 20 pounds to lose, we're still feeling this way. I do not want to sit here and tell you that just because I come from big numbers, I had a harder time. No. When we're battling whatever it is, when we're battling food addiction, these things happen. For me, I didn't fit into most amusement park rides, and I love roller coasters, but I didn't fit into them, and I didn't even want to open myself up to the ridicule of that. I had trouble tying my shoes, so I had to come up with Velcro as an option. I was worried about when someone would invite me to a party, what kind of chair was I going to have to sit in? So I ended up going to that isolation and stayed away from all of those things out of this concept, this intensity. No, we need to follow the food plan 100% or we're bad. There's the perfectionist model right there. Our parts work. Any of you that's been introduced to parts work understands the lacerating inner critic and how challenging it is to maneuver with our saboteurs and indulgers. Let's hopefully move them to mentors, advocates, and spunky kids instead of managers, firefighters, and wounded children. Those are much better places for me. So thinking about your life with food, which is unfortunately a big part of all of our lives, or we wouldn't be here right now. Let's think about when the other things I'm going to show you about the imposter syndrome aspects, common signs. Now, I want you to remember that these are signs, and this is a tool. This is a tool. The next slide will go into a little bit more detail on it, but common signs you're dealing with imposter syndrome. Focusing solely on mistakes rather than what you did, thinking that anyone could do your job despite evidence to the contrary, believing that the worth of a task or responsibility is determined by how hard it is, thinking that you're never enough or what you do is never enough, and overthinking to the point that you're not fully in the moment, the experience of anxiety, self-esteem issues, depression, and frustration from internal standards. It's not a disease or a disorder, guys. It's a social experience. So I don't want you to think this is one more thing. Oh my God, this is one more thing I have. It's something that we can look at. It's worth looking through this lens. And you can be sure that everything that I talk about could be validated or identified through another lens. This is just a new way, or an old way. For me, I've known about it since 1975, but it came up rearing its lovely, beautiful head just a few days ago. And I thought, I got to share this. So recognizing that this is another lens, and this is an aspect that we could look at things like, oh yeah, is that really true? Is that really true? Some of the other issues that came up in my looking through this thing were the family dynamics associated with the imposter syndrome. We often get labeled either the intelligent one or the sensitive one. Especially if we've got siblings or cousins or close family that interact. I personally was labeled the intelligent one, and I had to do everything perfectly, and I was expected to do everything 150%. I was also expected to do a bunch of other things to take care of my brothers, and being seen as capable and superior in all ways, naturally talented. I never thought that I was good enough at anything that I did. There was always some way better to do it. Being gifted intellectually or driven to succeed from an early age with parents who are neglectful, abusive, or absent. How many of us had to take care of ourselves a lot? How many of us were left to our own devices a lot? How many of us were expected to perform? And other areas around family dynamics, achievement being especially valued. So in the Western culture that I live in, it's very important to win. It's very important to get an A. It's very important to have the best and do the best. And so we're always looking for the best as far as, well, who's the prettiest? Who's the, who got the best grade? Who did it the fastest? Conflict or anger are present and not well managed in the family. That's another opportunity, and I use that word loosely, for imposter syndrome to show up. A lack of emotional transparency in the family, strict rules in the home, lack of support for the child and his or her individual, unique, complex experiences and skills. How many of us really love to do something, but we're poo-pooed? It was poo-pooed, and we didn't get validation for it. Sometimes those kinds of things can cause us to feel like we need to put some sort of a mask on. High need to please others in the family, high need for self-control or impulse control, or a low need for impulse control. Depending on your birth order, there may be something to be said for the youngest not being expected to do anything right, versus the oldest having many expectations. Neither one of them is, in my opinion, a healthy place to live. Growing up with a narcissistic or a codependent family dynamic, and parentifying children that are expected to do things without the support of parents. Going off on your own, or being expected to do your homework on your own, being expected to take care of yourself, parents being literally out of the house. Not to build on this and not to pound on it some more, but these are some of the phenomena that are correlated with this: cynicism, exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. So there's a difference in the physical and emotional. I'm sure you all are aware of that. Depersonalization, feeling like you're really not a real person. Depression, frustration, anxiety, low self-esteem. And it's the strongest predictor of general psychological distress. Burnout is a big deal in this as well. And that's, I think, where I was at 58. I had decided I couldn't lose the weight, but I wasn't going to take insulin. So I made changes to my food because I needed to make sure I never, I fell below the threshold of type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol. I didn't want to take that medicine. I didn't want to go there. That's why I started this program, not because I thought I was going to lose the weight. I decided there's no way I could. I was burned out on dieting. Ugh. And some of you may be burned out on counting your, weighing all your food and being so anal about the 3 meals only. And some of you may be burned out about all of these other aspects. Believe me, I get it. Can you see how the roller coastering and the fatigue and the failure, the repeated failure? I don't know how many times I joined Weight Watchers and how many times I lost weight and gained it back and then some. Those are all very much aspects of why this can build up. So let's talk about brain science for a minute, and let's take a deep breath, because this is a lot to digest, and you probably have a big circle of crazy going on in your head around all of these different aspects and how can I apply this? But let's think about what's going on in the brain for just a minute. There's no clear research. In other words, they haven't done a bunch of MRI studies of people that have imposter syndrome. But there is an error detection area. Anterior cingulate cortex is a good candidate for the imposter phenomenon because it measures prediction against actuality and sends a tilt message when things seem impossible or are out of alignment. So if we believe we are not good at something, our brain is going to say, yeah, no. Your brain is going to push us toward the imposter syndrome and say, yeah, like we can't. Context and intersectionality, the more we live through those family patterns, the tilt messages happen. Self-esteem in the brain. Researchers at Dartmouth College have identified a region of the brain that seems to predict a person's self-esteem levels. It's called the Frontostriatal Pathway. And the stronger or more active it is in the brain, the more self-esteem someone has. It connects the medial prefrontal cortex, which deals with self-knowledge, to the ventral striatum, which deals with feeling. So I can tell you with assurance that if you are in fight, flight, or freeze a lot, your prefrontal cortex is offline. So if you are constantly stressed, if you're constantly thinking about the reasons why you aren't doing something well enough, or the reasons why you can't do things, you should be doing things better. If you've got a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of emotional intensity around this, you're a lot of times offline. Your prefrontal cortex is literally offline. That's the thinking, functioning project manager brain.
Sonja,
Yeah,
are you going to talk about how we can remedy this?
absolutely.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's coming up next, Marcia.
Thank you.
Well, not maybe right next, but really
No, I
close.
know.
Yeah, it's really close. And that's why I said earlier, let's take a deep breath and remember that these things are all aspects of it. And you're right, Marcia, it was really challenging for me how to put this in the best order for everyone. I wanted to make sure I got it all in. And I also wanted to make sure that that it made sense and it was logically building. So I'll be talking just another slide about the brain, I think. And then we'll go to remedies, because there are a lot of them.
Good.
And they're super simple. Feelings of not deserving correlate with lower levels of the neurotransmitter serotonin. I don't know if you guys know this, but serotonin, about 80% of it is produced in the gut. And if we aren't in connection between our vagus nerve, which connects our brain and our gut, if there's not communication there, if we're offline because we're in our flight, or freeze, we don't produce serotonin. It's a happy hormone. We want it. But when we don't feel like we deserve it, it's challenging. I think also on there, I missed the cortisol production, but I think we all understand that. So I'm just going to spend just a minute on the default mode network, because to me, this is a really important aspect of what I want to talk about the healing. So if you recognize the default mode network, it's going to be that voice that the minute there's no conversation, the minute there's no talking, the minute there's no video games, the minute there's no TV, the minute you sit down to meditate, it's the voice we hear. And that voice, because of our childhoods, because of, in part, I'm sure, imposter syndrome, because of the lack of warmth that we received as children, it is awfully very lacerating, that voice. That's where our inner critic is, actually. It is there and designed to help keep us in community. So think about caveman days when our brains were first developing. The most important thing was to stay in community. We needed other people to warn us if there was a lion around the corner. We needed other people to show us where food was. We needed other people to help us if we got sick. We needed to stay in communities. We are community animals, mammals. And the default mode network is designed to help keep us in that community. So it is going to let us know when it feels like we're outside of community. So it is going to be that inner critic and remind us, hey, you didn't do that right. You said something really mean to that person, or you were really outside the bounds here, and you said something really weird and nobody laughed at you, or everybody laughed at you. And it puts you outside of the community. So the default mode network is a literal part of our brains that communicates. It has no empathy, and it is designed to literally keep us in community. It validates the imposter syndrome chatter. So these are, again, reminders. I don't need to go into too much detail about this again, because I just did it. Apparently this is duplication of my slides. So let's go on to recognizing that these different aspects of our food plan can be impacted by the imposter syndrome. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I want to go off, stop sharing for a minute here. Any questions at this point?
Did you say you would be sharing your slides?
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All
I
right.
have a question. This is Kristen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I've heard of this syndrome before, and I'm well versed in psychology, and I recognize that I totally have this in kind of like a little business that I have in animal communication. And I've always been good at this. And then I took a course in Boulder and I got much, much better. I knew all the tools, and I've been doing readings here and there. And every time I go to do a reading, I'm like, oh my gosh, what if it doesn't work this time? Like, do they know I'm not really an animal communicator? And I mean, I was so good that my teacher would put me with students that didn't know how to do it. She's like, you don't even need this class. You already are a natural at it. But I'm unsure, I guess, at this point, how it relates to the yo-yo of losing and then gaining and losing and gaining. So right now at this point, I've just given up and I just eat what I want. And I tell myself, well, I'm not like morbidly obese. I'm pretty plump, more plump than I want to be. But I'm 56. I look okay at 56. I'm not that bad. People usually think I'm younger. So I guess I'm curious, how this relates to the imposter syndrome.
Well, for me, this all feels, first of all, your reaction prior to going on stage or going on to doing a presentation is so common, and that is absolutely imposter syndrome-esque. That's the phenomenon, right? The other aspects to me chip away at our confidence, at our self-esteem, at our inner strength and our inner balance. I find this yo-yoing that happens, or the place where you are basically relaxing and letting go of some of the parameters. You may be needing to do some healing right now. I find that this pendulum that we end up with, that is often the case with yo-yoing, is so clear to me. I don't know if you've ever seen a pendulum that is just banging against the walls. That's what it feels like for me, from people that are either binging or restricting. And to me, the weight loss plan that is offered and gone back to is so restrictive. And so that's, to me, that's the pendulum, and that to me is the extremities from which we go. Whether or not you can specifically say this is imposter syndrome, I don't know. But the tools that I have, that I'm going to show you now, are clearly balancing oriented and clearly designed to relax that intensity, because to me, it's an intensity.
Yeah.
That's what the imposter syndrome feels like to me, is an intensity or a need to grip that steering wheel really hard.
Yeah, I guess because for me, I think like, oh my gosh, the only way I'm really going to be happy and have the greatest life I can live and be my best self is to have this perfection and weight loss. And so there's no in between. It's either I'm overeating everything like a child and being very childish about my choices, or I'm doing it perfectly. And then I can be happy if I'm doing it perfectly.
Right. And that's conditioning that we've had from a young age. And I'm going to talk about some unconscious contracts around that.
Okay.
And that's how it plays into the imposter syndrome concept.
Okay.
Like I said, they don't have like an MRI machine ready to go to show us, it's not lighting a particular side of the brain up. I think this is more, for me, this is more of a psychological reaction. And like I said, the chipping away at our foundation, so that we're tottering on things and we're not feeling comfortable in that space.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions before I go on? Okay. Let me share my screen again. All right. Can you see my screen again? All good? Okay. So I call this whole business, and I want you all to hear this. This is not about gripping the steering wheel. This is about relaxing. And that's the hardest thing about anything. I mean, how many of us have such struggles with meditation because it doesn't feel like I don't feel like I'm doing anything. It doesn't feel like I'm making an impact. It doesn't feel like, how many of us start eating normally as in a relaxed version, if you will, of the weight loss plan, and they don't see a result. So they get anxious. They've got to see something. That's a results oriented culture. But noticing is the first thing that you want to do. Know the signs, which we've just gone over. I just hammered them into you, and I apologize if your brain got overloaded. But, oh, I thought I had it, Rose, sorry. Noticing the signs and recognizing and just sitting in it. This is probably the hardest thing for perfectionists and overachievers to even consider. To just sit and notice. What? No, you're not alone. I don't know how many people are on this call, but every one of us considers at least one of these things to be real for them. No, you're not alone. And I know we all get that there's a whole bunch of us out there that have food issues. Distinguish humility and fear, recognizing that humility, feeling humble about what is out there. To me, this is in essence surrender and honoring the fear that we feel. Somebody shared in the chat thread earlier today about the idea of what if I unpeel all this onion and I don't like what I find. There's such a fear about that. I totally understand it. I can tell you it's a part of me is afraid that I'm not going to measure up to anything if I'm not wearing this mask. So letting go of perfectionism. These are all real easy things to say. They're real easy to say. But the more that we try to put them into practice by just relaxing. So be kind to yourself. Track your success. This one is something I just find it so funny. I talk to my clients all day long about, well, let's do a gratitude list. Oh, I do a gratitude list every day. Oh, good. Do you do one for yourself? Do you do a gratitude list of all the really great things you did today? What? Track your success. Talk with your mentor and manager. This is boss related, but this is also really an important aspect to know that you've got someone that you can look up to and that can validate where you are. Say yes to things. Step outside your comfort zone. Throw your knapsack over the wall. Say yes to things. And this one is one that's really uncomfortable. Can be. Most people have not so much trouble sitting in joy, but they maybe don't even recognize it. And most people are really uncomfortable sitting in fear or in sadness or in anguish or in disgust. There's a lot of work out there that talks about just sitting in that feeling for just a minute can just really relax everything. 90 seconds is apparently the intensity with which we feel that emotion, and then it subsides. Our brains and our bodies are designed to help us. We don't need to go to food. We don't need to numb ourselves out with food. So mindful self-compassion is something that I took a class a couple of years ago by my dear friend, Eve Decker, who's a mindful self-compassion teacher. She's also a Dharma teacher and a Buddhist, and she's got a long history of, she's currently one of the mentors for Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach's 2-year meditation certification. She's very wise, and she teaches mindful self-compassion. And this is something that a lot of us really struggle with who are imposter syndrome aficionados. When you consider the self-compassion aspect, again, this is about gratitude for yourself. This is about sitting in the moment. This is about staying right here, right now, and being completely and totally mindful. Eve Decker is actually offering a class, and I can post the information later. She's offering a class that starts March 6th, I think. She's offering 2 different classes. I'll send the information out in the thread. It's very worth it. It's 6 weeks, and just incredible to just sit in self-compassion and mindfulness and just sit and feel. Boy, how many of us have I spent 50 plus years not feeling. So tracking your own accomplishments. Again, I can't say it enough, and I can't say it in more ways. Luck, hard work, and help from others. Yes, we can say, sure, there's an aspect of that, but what we need to say, I'm proud of what I've accomplished. How many of us say, well, I lost some weight, but I'm not there yet? How many of us say, wow, I did all these really great things, but I haven't gone here yet. I'm not there yet. Ugh. Yeah, did you have a question, Kristen?
Oh yeah. I don't really say I'm not there yet. What I say when I lose weight is, and I can lose pretty fast when I put my mind to it, is that it doesn't matter because I'll just gain it right back.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I say.
That's an unconscious contract, my dear.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I guess it
I'm going to
is.
be talking about that. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about that in just a minute. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. Qualities that might be important to consider in trusted connection. Trusted connection in particular is, to me, the watchword is, we're always told we need to connect. Okay, make 3 phone calls a day. How many of us have tried that and don't feel comfortable dialing that phone? How do we know that other person on the other line is going to say something that's going to help me? How do I know they're going to not say something that's scary or wrong or judgmental? Or what if I don't measure up? How many of us, the imposter syndrome and just making phone calls? So these are some things to consider when you're determining whether or not you've got a trusted connection. Does your body relax around them? This is something we get to notice. And this is a part of the piece. This is significant career accomplishment, has more to do with our business environment. Show genuine interest in you and your story. Vulnerability, or open and honest about their own struggles. They see you and they understand your competence and experience. They communicate well. And they have a wide window of welcome. You can share difficult moments with them. Those are aspects that are really important to determine, because it needs to be trusted. That's the important word, is trusted connection, in order to help us move past this thing and to believe others' words. So self-warmth is a part of what is a really important part of healing that inner critic. And it speaks to the mindfulness and self-compassion. It speaks to the gratitude for ourselves. It speaks to honoring our accomplishments and honoring our own warts. I'm a little intense sometimes. I get a little passionate sometimes. I'll get up at 3 a.m. and text someone and forget that I might be waking them up. You know, I get to be all of these things. It's what's made me who I am today. I'm also oh my God, I procrastinate like crazy. I just procrastinate, and it just sends me into a tizzy. My panties get all in a twist, and I'm just like, why am I doing this to myself? But I'll tell you what, procrastination has actually been really, really helpful for me, because it has actually shown me there's a reason I'm resistant right now. The resistance can be a beautiful gift. So the default mode network, let me just talk a minute about that. That's that place in the brain that I talked about earlier. That is a center. There's 7 different places. We can hear a voice from the stuff that Susan talks a lot about the voice that comes in her book. If anybody knows Bright Line Eating's book by Susan Pierce Thompson, she talks about the voices that can come in our own voice that are designed to help push us to one thing or another. They ask us to eat when we're hungry, or when we're tired, or when we're lonely, or we interpret it that way. The default mode network is a section in our brain that currently, for most of us, can be pretty lacerating. If we have a really strong inner critic, you can guarantee that your default mode network has had not enough warmth growing up. Warmth, resonant warmth coming from others, validating, oh, aren't you sweet? Oh, I love that laugh. Oh, seeing a smiling face and duplicating that back to that little one. Maybe you didn't get that. And so we end up shifting our thoughts and our processes, our inner system. We shift to help make sure that we're staying in connection. This is a little complicated, so I hope I'm making sense here. But this is a combination of things that I have found: the default mode network, our unconscious contracts, which I alluded to a minute ago with Kristen's brilliant question, and our lack of self-warmth and lack of self-compassion. These are all aspects from our childhood, considering the interactions that we've had. We adapt our nervous system to, it's the only thing we have in control of. We can't get up and change the channel. We can't get up and leave and walk around and relax and enjoy the woods. We're 3 years old. We don't get those choices. So what we do is we make these shifts. We make these shifts in our own nervous system. We numb ourselves to certain emotions that aren't appreciated. How many of us feel like we laugh too loud? How many of us feel like we don't fit in with this certain group? So we're going to try and change something about ourselves to get to fit in with that group because a part of us doesn't feel right. Yeah, go ahead.
What if we had, well, I'm guessing like most of us, I had hot and cold parents that like mostly to my mom. My dad was violent, but my mother was like a fantastic mother on so many, like over the top fantastic mother. But then on the other hand, she was occasionally would be very cruel. So it got very confusing. It's very confusing about that. And now I'm just having an aha, I think that I guess I do that to myself. Like with dieting, I can, oh man, it just feels like, oh, I'm just like that wonderful mothering skill, you know, to myself. And then that occasional like collapse and cruelty comes in, I guess. Am I making sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The hot and cold.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I think that speaks to the pendulum concept as well.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. And recognizing that, that when there's an inconsistency from the people around us, and what you're describing is, it feels like there's no firm ground.
Yeah. You don't know
firm
what's
foundation.
coming.
Right. And you weren't sure. You weren't sure what was, well, which mom is going to show up today.
Mm-hmm.
That is incredibly diseasing and unsettling.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
so it makes sense that you would use food to numb yourself and soothe and nurture yourself.
So for me, or maybe others on this, so, listening, I guess I don't know which mother I'm going to be for myself. Like this weekend, am I going to indulge and have ice cream or something? Or will I be good mom to myself?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And that imposter syndrome says, this is the pinnacle. I need to be the good mom. Not only do I need to not have ice cream, but I also need to weigh and measure everything. And I have to get it down to the exact, and I have to eat every 4.5 hours or every 5.5 hours. And I have to do, it gets untenable and it's exhausting.
And my mother was always a yo-yo dieter. And so she would put us on diets when we were really little. And the youngest was 6 when she put us all on our first diet.
Uh-huh.
And none of us were overweight. We were slender, very slender. So it's pretty complicated.
Well, it is. And it's beautiful when we can parse it out. The fact is that I always thought that these things were cemented in, these attitudes, these concepts, these, I mean, I don't know how many of us have heard, by the age of 4, everything is set.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not actually true. Stephen Porges came up with something called the Polyvagal Theory, which basically talks about the vagus nerve and how it interacts and the ways that we can heal those aspects of our brain, the default mode network in particular, the inner critic, but other aspects of our brain. The healing components come from Deb Dana's research in psychotherapy and Sarah Payton's work in unconscious contracts and resonant warmth.
Can you spell Stephen Porges?
Porges.
Okay, that's how I wrote it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm going to talk just for a minute about these. These are concepts that are, in my opinion, a little intense. These are things that Sarah Payton feels are completely missing when we go to the validation of someone comes to us and says that, I've got this problem. We are often geared up to find the Pollyanna answer or the sweet answer or the the happy solution, or God forbid, we also go to the, oh, but look at how you look great. You look great. There's nothing really wrong with you. Those are dismissing comments, but these are warm resonance. Do you need acknowledgement that you haven't seen anyone who looks like you doing what you're doing? Do you need any acknowledgement that there have been times that your voice or ideas were not welcomed or included? Do you need acknowledgement for experiences where your efforts have not been seen or celebrated? Do you long to contribute? Do you need to know you and your efforts matter? Are you exhausted, and do you need acknowledgement of your deep care, love of beauty, efficiency, ease? Do you need acknowledgement of your alarmed aloneness? Alarmed aloneness is when we are left alone as children, or in any case, someone dismisses us and walks away, says, you don't have a real problem. So all of these are really, really big, deep concepts, and I'm just brushing the surface of them, and I will happily go way deeper in another class. But these are concepts around shifting out of the imposter syndrome. When you can start to acknowledge, and even if you're doing this for yourself, talking to yourself about what you need, but finding trusted community that can provide you with this resonant warmth, it's really, really helpful.
Just my epiphany for those. Those also sound like really good reparenting
Yes.
words. Do you need acknowledgement?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Liz. So in the process of growing up and navigating life, we develop and cement agreements with ourselves and others in our lives to help us stay in community. We may have contracts to not like ourselves, to be indifferent, even to hate and be cruel to ourselves and others. Without knowing it, we make these self-agreements in order to leverage our nervous systems to take care of the people around us, because it's the only thing we have. We may make sure we are never sad so that things are easier for our families. The long-term results for our bodies, minds, and nervous systems can be even tragic, though we originally want to do the best thing for everyone. This comes right out of Sarah Payton's book called Your Resonant Self Workbook. These are deep and wide-ranging and too much to go into today. I'm taking a whole year-long course in them. Just want you to hear that this is a really lovely, wonderful topic. But Kristen already pointed out one around, well, I can easily lose the weight. I just always gain it back. I don't know if that's exactly what you said, but that's a very clear one for me. That one was really clear for me. And these unconscious contracts can be the roadblock, and we don't even realize that they're there until we start talking about it. Here are some examples of the basics. How many of you are really challenged by mindful self-compassion? How hard is it for you to say, I love myself? How many of you don't believe you're worthy of kindness and warmth? You've screwed up so many times. To me, this is integral to the imposter syndrome. The concept over time, constantly being validated. Yeah, I screwed that up, and I screwed that up. I screwed that up. I screwed that up. Instead of looking at our accomplishments, we're looking at the few bad things we did and amplifying them. How many of you are challenged when I ask you to list things you're grateful for about yourself, and maybe why you're here today? This is one that I found immediately when I started to do this work. I, Sonja, promise myself, I don't know what that noise is, but somebody's unmuted. Can you find it, Liz? Thank you. I, Sonja, promise myself that I will not take up space when I'm with my mother. In order to make sure my mother receives the attention she needs to survive, no matter the cost to myself or others, I muted myself around my mom. Absolutely. My mom was an opera singer. She was on stage. The only time she felt comfortable was when she was on stage. And I know I muted myself. And I think a big piece of it, when I look at it today, is around the fact that my mom and my dad's marriage was on the rocks. My mom needed to shine. And anytime I came home dancing around the living room and, You know, talking about my A's, I think I felt like it diminished my mom. And so I muted my light. And that's been an interesting one for me. These can go on for days. And I don't want you guys to feel like opening up this huge can of worms. What to me, I hope this is a light, shining a light on things. Oh, that sounds like a contract that I have. Legal contracts, they're legal contracts we create with ourselves, and they're unbinding, the unbinding of them, blessing their release, is also a whole other lecture, but suffice it to say, it's an area that's deep and rich, and we can start with noticing it here. So here are some unconscious contracts. I will not believe my accomplishments are real. I will not believe my efforts are good enough. I will only accept perfection. I will believe that I must be perfect. I will not achieve more or be more successful than others. I will not succeed. I will not believe that what I'm doing could possibly be what's contributing to what's happening. I will believe that others consistently overvalue me. I will not know there is a link between my efforts and what happens in my life. I will not recognize my professional life. I will not be the same person as my professional self. I will see myself, know I exist the ways others see me. When we say these things out loud, to me, it's no different than saying some of the inner criticism out loud. It just does not ring true. And yet it rings true. And so can we let go of these things? Can we say, so this is the first part of the unconscious contract. The second part is in order to not exceed others, be liked, belong. Fitting in is not belonging, by the way, actually belonging. To not threaten my belonging, to be in integrity with my love of equality, equity, and justice, to not be more than my mother or father, to understand the gap between the way I'm perceived personally and the way I'm perceived professionally. I'm not going to go back through this, but this is a recap of the imposter syndrome. And here's my take on all of this. This is my way of relaxing. What if nothing is wrong? What if everything is fine? Is everything fine right now? I think so. We're all sitting here enjoying each other's company. We're sitting on Zoom, probably have a comfortable chair. Hopefully you're sitting relaxing with the computer on your lap and just popping your feet up and enjoying a spot of tea. Yeah, there you go, Nancy. Thank you. So what if nothing is wrong? And asking these questions in the moment when you are wound up, when you feel like there's a cacophony, a chaos going on. Am I safe? Thinking about what works right now and loving all the parts of us, regardless of whether or not they, I did some real crappy things in my youth. I did some really just mean, nasty stuff. I think, if I were to just start listing, I could probably go on for a little while. But I also know that that's a part of what has shaped me today, because I did those things. And now I'm really, really clear. I'm never going to do that kind of thing again. I'm clear that it helped shape me, though, to appreciate and respect that I'm human. Let's front load some joy. It's one of my favorite things. Came to me, another 2 a.m. epiphany up in the middle of the night, recognizing that that if we do things in advance of, if we breathe and relax and sing and dance in advance of, start the day that way, we're going to find the whole day is lighter and we can relax into it. So important. So important. All right, everybody. I want to see everybody here. I hope this was hopeful. It was intense, I know, because we're going into some really intense topics. But my hope is that there is a light at the end of this particular part of our journey. It's never over until we're, 6 feet under. Or gracing the woods behind me with my essence. So my hope is that this brought something for you that was helpful. And recognizing that we can do any number of things when we know. The more we know, the more information we have, the better off we are at getting to the root of it. It's courageous. It's creative. Thanks, Michelle.
Sonja,
Yeah.
I think there's enough people here who go to the magic who would affirm what I have to say is that there's certain recipes for taking care of yourself that always happen on the magic. There was one page that if you took off your header and put in what is the magic all about, feeling safe, being heard, being seen, those are all things that happen in our morning calls. There's so many calls during the day, but that's what it's about. That's exactly what it's about. Thanks, Kel. Thanks, Joy. Jenny. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. It was a lovely call. Appreciate it. I was like, oh, that's me. That's me. Oh, yeah, that's me.
Yeah. So
I was
yeah.
out shoveling. I wasn't sitting in a relaxing chair. I was actually out shoveling. But
Oh, but that can be exhilarating. That can
It
be
was.
something.
Yeah. It's energy
Yeah.
now. It's like
That's
great.
awesome. That's awesome.
Sonja, Nancy asked what the magic is. I'll
Yeah,
let you explain what the
So
magic is.
I want you all to hear, one of the things that's really important to me is that, first of all, I'm a coach and I help people transform, but I am not here to sell you anything. And I plan to have some more of these to give you a taste of what I've learned. But I do have a membership group, and I have a small group coaching. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I do. And I base it on this type of thing that you're hearing today. I don't go at it from the typical perspective. One of the first things I did when I opened up my magic membership, it's called Where the Magic Happens. And when I opened up the magic membership, I was clear that the thing that we were missing was trusted community. I didn't have any science to back it up at that point. I didn't have any information that was aware. It was just my gut telling me this is what we need. And the trusted is the important thing. So you looking out here right now on all these people that are willing to get on camera right now, most of these people don't know each other. And when you're looking out over the screen, there is a part of us, a safety component, a human component that says, I need to be validating that these people are safe before I'm willing to A, B, and C, right? So what I wanted to do was to try to create a space that was safe enough to walk in, whether or not you sat down, whether or not you got on camera, whether or not you said anything. I wanted it to be safe enough to walk in. So I do have a membership group called Where the Magic Happens, and you can find it at transformwithsonja.com, and you spell my name with a J. You can find it in a few places, but that's the easiest place to find how to sign up for it if you're interested. Please message me. My name on this screen right now is my Facebook name, and that's the easiest way. If you have a question, I would happily sit down with you. I offer 20-minute stuff to just kind of handle things and question things. If there's something that came up for you today that was challenging or brought up something that caused your stomach to go into big old knots, I don't want that. I want you to relax and be delighted, but sometimes that's a challenge. So I'm happy to sit down with you if you've got any particular questions. So I just want you to hear that the reason I wanted to bring this was that I felt it was so important. It was epiphanal for me because it started me on the journey in 1978 to recognizing, at least to be able to say, oh, maybe that is really me. Maybe I am not wearing a mask. Maybe that is me. All of it, the warts and the pimples and the bright, shiny dimples, all of that is me. And every one of us has warts and pimples and dimples. Some are more obvious than others. Any other questions of anybody?
I have a comment, but if someone has a question, then go ahead.
Go ahead, let's.
I was just going to say one of the things that Sarah says that I really think is a good question for all of us to ask. Well, she always says it as a statement, but it's a good question to ask. She says, is it truth or is that it's not your truth, it's your trauma? So I think sometimes that might be a good question to ask when something comes up. Is that my truth or my trauma?
Just taking a pause to say that. Just taking a pause to say, is this my truth or is my trauma? Will allow you to get out of your amygdala, which is grabbing a hold of you to make you want to face plant in the food. It's gonna pull you out of the amygdala just enough to put you in the noticing brain, which can ship you to the thinking brain, which can do a body scan and can do a pause and a moment of reflection and a moment of sitting in this space. Just that question. Put that on a sticky note and stick it to everywhere on your world. Because that also pulls it out. Sticky notes do it. It's kind of amazing. I have them everywhere. I'm actually writing a book about it. My sticky notes are everywhere. But I want you all to hear that this is such an important and empowering space for you to be in. It's beautiful. It's a gift. The food that has been our bane and our hell is a beautiful gift if you can shift the framing. I consider myself a master reframer. Think about the food. Every time you eat something off plan now that you're aware, it's a beautiful light. It shines on something and it says, wow, I wonder why I did that. Instead of going to guilt and shame and disgust and grief, go to that question. I wonder why I ate that. It's such a beautiful, gentle, curious thing. Yeah. Anybody else? A lot to digest. I'm going to post the link for this recording if you want to listen to it again, and I will post the slides in the messenger group. I'm not sure if I want to bombard the whole world with it. You can always request to join Beyond Your Weight Loss Roller Coaster. It's a Facebook group that I have that's open. It doesn't cost a thing. And it's where I often will post events. There's lots of recordings in there if you want to listen to some other things that I do, and then some other things that I talk about. Beyond Your Weight Loss Roller Coaster. It's a Facebook page. I will post the recording there as well. And the slides. Thank you all for coming. Oh, so delightful to see you. Mwah.
Thank
Have a
you.
magical day. Don't forget to front load that joy. Go find some dancing music just for a minute. Thank you, Nancy. That was beautiful. Go and find something. It raises your vibrational energy and it doesn't hurt at all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sonja. You too.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Sonja.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Good to see you all. So delightful.
you.
Mwah.
Mhm.
Big
Yeah.
hug.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Beautiful smile, Julie. Thank you.
Love it. Love the magic.
Bye-bye.
Bye.